Entrepreneurial Edge is brought to you by Business Banking from FNB, because small ideas can lead to big business. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, if you have any comments and suggestions on the show, please send me an email to entrep@abn360.com. Now, still in the studio with me, I have Andrew Golding, the Chief Executive of Pam Golding Properties. Andrew, just talk a bit more about your business now. Now, the top properties you're selling here in Africa's biggest economy, South Africa, are more than $6 million. What kind of people in this day and age have that kind of money to lash out on a roof over their heads?
Yeah, I think one's got to look at those sorts of properties in world terms, and relative to properties in New York or Saint-Tropez or London. $6 million is certainly not the top end of the scale. So if one accepts that one is dealing in that genre of property purchaser, whether they be a local purchaser or an international purchaser, then in relative terms, the South African property market is still cheap, albeit that clearly 50 million rand is a serious amount of money.
And yeah, as I say, what kind of customers are you getting from around the world when a property goes on the market for that kind of money, $6 million?
So I think South Africa, and in particular certain parts of the country, are now competing with the Saint-Tropez and the Londons and the New Yorks of the world. And so those individuals who are seeing the merits of what, for example, Clifton or Bantry Bay has to offer, are weighing up their choices around Saint-Tropez, Clifton. And certainly if one looks at a pure price comparison, Clifton is cheap by comparison.
And are you ever concerned at all that the legislators here may go along with other countries like Mozambique, for instance, and say that, sorry, foreigners can't buy property in this country, you've got to be a citizen? Could that not choke the market a bit for you?
So I think the reality is that the foreign component of our market relative to the total number of property sales that happen in a year is really very small, way less than 1% of properties that are sold in South Africa in any given year are sold to foreigners. So I think that there's a lot of confusion around the extent to which foreigners influence the market, and particularly in recent times with the global economic recession, there's been a significant downturn in the amount of foreigners that have bought property in South Africa. So I hope not. I certainly think that the benefits of foreigners investing in South Africa far outweighs any negatives.
And speaking about Mozambique, I was writing a story the other day about the turmoil in 1975 in Mozambique, and they were saying some people who were leaving, the white Mozambicans, were giving their keys to people and saying, take it away. And I was wondering how much those properties will be costing now. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're into Mozambique and other Southern African countries. How are you finding the market in the regional sense?
So I think it varies from country to country. As far as Mozambique is concerned, there was a time when the leisure component of the Mozambican market, particularly up and down the Mozambican coast from Maputo, was showing some signs of buoyancy. But as the leisure market just about worldwide has taken strain, so has that market. The Maputo market is a fairly robust market, characterized by good, strong demand and economics. And so prices there are holding up well. Other parts of Africa, it really just depends on the specifics of the country. We've just opened an office in Nairobi in Kenya at the moment, and there the property market is really extremely buoyant. There's a lot of activity.
And also you have an operation in Zimbabwe,
yep.
I understand. How is it going there, with bearing in mind what's happened to the economy in the last 10 years?
Look, it's certainly been an extremely tough business to be in terms of our operation there, but remarkably we've got an extremely good operator who's managed to hold their own in very tough times, and somehow I think Zimbabweans are generally very resilient, and they found a way to transact and to keep the business going. And buying and selling in Harare happens, albeit under difficult circumstances.
Now, one thing you might be able to help me out here, I mean, somebody mentioned a theory once, a fellow journalist, that in Zimbabwe, because the currency crashed and lost its value very quickly, they were saying people's bonds and mortgages, whatever you want to call them, also were wiped out at the same time. Are you finding that, or?
No, I don't think so. I think that the Zimbabwean property market is predominantly a cash economy now, a cash market, and has been for some time. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with that.
And which other countries are you into? Zambia also?
We've been in Zambia for a number of years, Swaziland, Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, Mauritius and the Seychelles. We've got aspirations around being the property services provider of choice throughout the African continent. We think that there's a fantastic opportunity all over the continent, and we're very bullish about the opportunities.
How tough is it, though, in the property game in the last few years, bearing in mind what's happened to the world economy?
No, it's certainly been extremely tough. In 2007, we were coming off a 5 or 6 year boom. Nothing could go wrong, and the market literally fell off a cliff. 50% of activity disappeared overnight, and one had to react very quickly to those market conditions. And slowly but surely since then, things have improved, probably by about 10% per annum. So we're still at least 20 to 30% below the peak of 2007. And one's had to adapt to new market circumstances and the reality that we're in a completely new paradigm and probably won't return to those old days for a long time.
As a real estate company, what do you have to do to adapt when there are tough times and people aren't buying?
I think one's got to assess the market, the true market conditions, and relate your own business to that, and either find ways of increasing sales and increasing market share to boost your top line, or you've got to take the hard decisions around cutting your costs and making sure that your business is appropriately expensed around your income.
I mean, what about the finance side of it? Do you think that, is it the tightness of the finance right now because of the world conditions, or is it people psychologically are scared about lashing out money at a time when they can afford it?
I think it's both. I think as far as the leisure market is concerned, the second home market and the holiday home market, there's definitely a reticence around sentiment. People are reticent to invest in holiday homes at this time. But I think in terms of the primary market, we're in a fairly normal market now, where banks are starting to lend again and transactions are taking place. And I think we're heading towards as normal a market as one can find anywhere in the world in terms of the South African property market, as far as the metropolitan centres are concerned.
Which end of the market has been hardest hit, you think, by what's happened in the last few years?
So I think it's been hit across the board. There's a view that the very top end of the market, because it's effectively a cash component, has been least hard hit. But in reality, there are very few trades at that end of the market. So I'm not sure that necessarily gives you a true perspective. And other than that, pretty much across the board, the market has been hit.
And where you see it going in the next year or two? You said you're a bit more optimistic now.
Yeah, so I think the improvement we've seen over the last 3 years will continue. I don't think we're going to see dramatic improvement, certainly for the balance of this year. But a slow and steady improvement in the market is pretty much what we can expect, I think. And I think within the next couple of years, we're going to see a return to positive conditions and a buoyant property market. Whereas at the moment, I would think that we're in a situation of improvement, but it's really pretty neutral.
And what about another one of the theories doing the rounds, that because of the depression, houses aren't being built as fast as they were maybe 5-10 years ago, and that's increasing the prices of property. Is that true?
There's no question that the developers across the board have decided to be more cautious about new projects coming on stream. Although in the last 12 months, we've started to see developers coming out of the woodwork again and taking a more buoyant and optimistic view. But I think for at least 2 years, there was an absolute slowdown in new build activities. And that's undoubtedly going to lead to a further shortage against the backdrop of an already shortage situation of housing.
And talk a bit more about yourself now. I understand, aside from the property game, you're also an entrepreneur in, well, as you said, high risk. You've got a project on at the moment.
Yeah, so when I was a medical practitioner, a colleague of mine who was a pharmaceutical, worked for one of the pharmaceutical companies, offered me an opportunity to get involved in an invention that he had patented, which was a razor invention. So we've got 12 patents on this particular razor invention. It's been a 14-year project, so it's been a fairly long haul, but we're optimistic and hopeful at the moment that we've introduced it to a company that is interested in the patents and the technology that we've developed. And so we're holding thumbs. I think it is very much a hit or miss venture. So certainly high risk, but hopefully high reward.
And isn't that another one of the stories of today? People always say, oh, you can get rich through this invention, or when's it going to be? But if you waited 14 years already...
I think if someone had said to me it's going to take you 14 years before you get the first nibble on this, I would have been slightly more reticent.
You could be the first razor millionaire. And yourself, you sort of have a flamboyant lifestyle? Do you have a... what do you do when you want to let your hair down?
So I'm very interested in sport, both the participation and watching of sport. I have a family, and that certainly takes up a big chunk of my time. Did my first Ironman last year, which was a fantastic event in which I'm really enjoying being involved in. So that's...
As an entrepreneur, I mean, how do you want people to regard you in the years to come? How do you want people to look on the career of Andrew Golding, entrepreneur?
So I think I've been given a very I've been given a very fortunate opportunity to take over the baton of an incredible brand, and I hope to grow the brand internationally and hand it on one day to whoever succeeds me, with the company in good shape and having extended its footprint, both in terms of services and in terms of geographical location.
Do you think entrepreneurs are born or are they made?
So I think it's a bit of both. I think one's got to have an inherent entrepreneurial bent, but I think there's lots to learn as an entrepreneur along the way, and the school of hard knocks is the best one.
And what do you think was the hardest knock you had in the retail property business?
I think the fact that we always had a bottom drawer plan for a downturn in the market, and we had various plans for various downturns, so 10%, 20%, 30%. Never in our wildest dreams did we think the market would drop by 50%, and that took all of us by surprise, and one had to react extremely quickly.
And looking ahead now, the business, how do you see it growing and developing in the future?
Yeah, we're very optimistic about the future. We've got some very ambitious market share growth plans. We've got some ambitious geography growth plans. We think that there's an exciting opportunity lying ahead in the property market in Africa. And so that's going to take up quite a bit of our time. We think there's an opportunity to further diversify our property services portfolio, and still lots of work to do.
Well, best of luck with all that. Andrew Golding, the CEO of Pam Golding Property Group, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. That's all we have time for this week, I'm afraid. Be sure to tune in again next week for another episode of the Entrepreneurial Edge. Until then, from me, it's goodbye.